ready?
Recording in progress.
I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome everyone to the Select Board meeting for January 7th, 2025. Later on in the meeting, we will be convening with the Water Board also as a joint meeting relative to an issue that we want to discuss. I would like to ask everyone to rise, please, and face the flag. And I will lead. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we do at every meeting, I'm gonna open it up for public comments. If anyone has something they want to discuss that's not on the agenda this evening, now would be the time to do so. Yes.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask, should I wait to talk about the ask during the budget part of this agenda item or now?
Budget's on the agenda.
Yeah. It's on the agenda, so yeah, I think that would make more sense. I'm not seeing any hands up on Zoom or in the room, so we'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is to approve the minutes from the meeting of December 30th.
Move to approve the minutes for December 30th.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sounded like 5-0. It was 5-0. And we'll move on to the big one, agenda item number 5, which is to possibly approve the fiscal year 2026 budget and to review and possibly approve the town meeting warning. We'll start with the budget. We discussed it at our meeting, our last meeting, and made some changes. And the primary change was to use some of the fund balance, which is a residual from operating in the black over the years, to reduce the property tax impact of this particular budget. Over the years, I've asked a lot of our accountants and others what would be an appropriate fund balance to carry forward every year, and I received answers anywhere from 3% to 10 or even above. 10 seems pretty excessive to me. 3 to 5 seems more likely, I think, and that's what we've kind of operated under the past 3, now 4 town managers, was trying to stay in that 3 to 5% range, and if we exceeded that, to use it to help defray some of the increases. If we drop below that, then we wouldn't draw from that particular fund. We haven't used it in a few years. Well, I shouldn't say that. The year that's currently under review may actually have operated with a deficit. And so that amount will be drawn from the fund balance that we've carried forward, but it still leaves a pretty healthy amount of money. And the amount that we're looking at using would bring it down. It could be in that 3% range, probably at the bottom of where it should be. But there's still plenty of money there should we wind up with a deficit to cover that scenario, unless there's some ridiculous thing. We'll deal with that if that happens. So other than that, there weren't a lot of changes from what we had discussed earlier.
You know, it's something you guys had seen several times, so it really wasn't any surprise.
So I guess so go to the podium, please.
For those who don't know me, my name is John Burnham. I'm the Executive Director of the Manchester Business Association. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and fellow select board members for taking this time to consider our request again. I know we've been talking about it over the past couple of months, but we just want to reiterate how strongly we believe that you should approve the $25,000 matching funding for a full-time events manager that would be hired by the Manchester Business Association, as this position would significantly contribute to the economic growth and cultural vitality of the Manchester community. A dedicated events manager would have the time and focus necessary to proactively seek out and secure new events, festivals, and other unique items that align with the town's identity and tourism goals. These events would bring in visitors from outside the area, directly boosting tourism and drawing attention to the town's unique attractions, businesses, and hospitality offerings. By attracting a wider variety of events such as cultural festivals, sporting tournaments, and seasonal activities, the town could expand its calendar events and diversify its tourism base. In addition to attracting these new events, a full-time events manager would be instrumental in enhancing existing ones. By improving logistics, promotion, and partnerships, this role could elevate the quality and attendance of the town's annual events, such as Street Fest, 4th of July celebrations, concerts on the green, and the annual tree lighting, among others. A more dynamic events calendar would not only boost repeat visitation, but also strengthen the town's reputation as a vibrant destination, making it an attractive place to live, to visit, and to do business. This would also help sustain the existing businesses we have while drawing new ones in to the community to help fill some of those vacant spaces we all hear talk about. Most importantly, this increase in tourism and foot traffic from these events would directly boost local option tax revenue through rooms, meals, sales, taxes. As visitors spend money at local hotels, restaurants, shops, and venues, the local economy would experience a clear uplift. This increase in local option tax revenue can help fund local services and infrastructure improvements without placing additional burden on the residents while supporting a low municipal tax rate. Over time, the revenue generated by a well-executed event strategy would more than offset the $25,000 investment for this position, providing a sustainable and profitable return. This is a unique opportunity at this point, and that may not come again, as we have secured a partnership, as you know, with a nonprofit foundation willing to support the funding of this position. The foundation is committed to covering 50% of the total cost for the first 2 years, up to $35,000 annually. This funding is contingent, of course, on the town's commitment as well to help match that with $25,000 in years 1 and 2. Additionally, we are also actively seeking an additional $10,000 to $15,000 from other funding sources that would not only help with the salary, benefits, all the things that need, and potentially items that these new events would need a cost factor in that. To ensure sustainability and minimize the town's financial commitment in the future years, the Manchester Business Association will work with this events manager to charge a fee based on the size and scopes of events. This fee would be set aside to cover any future shortfalls in funding, particularly in the 3rd year and beyond, as contributions from the foundation and town taper off. The goal is to increase self-sufficiency for the position over time, allowing us to reduce dependency on the town's budget while driving sustainable economic impact. In short, the town's $25,000 contribution will unlock a minimum of $45,000 from the nonprofit foundation and other additional funding sources. This means the town's contribution will cover about 1/3 of the total cost. This partnership provides a strong return on this investment and ensures a sustainable, impactful position that will deliver long-term financial benefits and enhance the quality of life for the local community.
Excuse me. Thank you.
A mere 2.5% increase in stays across all of our available accommodations in Manchester, hotels, B&Bs, motels, and short-term rentals as well, is enough to more than cover the $25,000 investment in local option tax revenue growth. Thank you for your consideration, and we hope you approve our request. And I can provide other data and information you need.
The request comes at a tough time, but I don't know if there's ever a good time. having been through this for 100 years. But this year, it's been particularly difficult because even after hours of hard work by management, town staff, and this board, we were staring at over a 10% increase in property tax contribution. And through the process that I just outlined a few minutes ago, we were able to get it back down to close to the 6% that we thought was the ceiling of what was acceptable. It's a good plan. It's a good request. But we also have to, in consideration of the budget, we have to look at what are the core services that we provide, and how do we accommodate our ability to continue to provide the core services at the rate that we're used to and that our constituency is used to. And then what are the things that we'd like to do? This is something that I think anybody could argue it's a good idea, something we'd like to do, but it's not a core service. We do contribute to the business community through the $50,000 in the budget every year for marketing. Yes, this is a benefit to the town, but it's a benefit to the business community. I do realize that people are employed and they work, and the business community is how they put their food on their table. But there are people that have to pay taxes in this town that don't benefit directly from that segment of our economy. The part about raising enough option taxes to pay for the $25,000 contribution, that's a $3.5 million increase in order to generate $25,000, which is 70% of 1%, which is what the state gives back to us. And that doesn't cover the handling fees that they charge us.
Minus a small fee.
Yeah, minus that 5 or 8% or whatever it is at this point. Would it have the potential? I mean, you know, you can explain that number any way you want. If it's 2.5% over every transaction that takes place in town over the course of a year, then yes, it would cover that $3.5 million. I'm sure you've done the math on that, so I'm going to accept your numbers. Again, that's a whatever that increase is directly benefits the business community, indirectly benefits the town. And I'm with you. I don't think anybody expects it to pay for itself in the first year. There's certainly some potential for it to be a benefit, and of course, the expectation that the town contribution will diminish over time and hopefully go away. I've heard that before too. I'm leaning away from it, and I'm done talking, and I'll let the rest of the board and the people in attendance speak.
So, Mr. Chairman, I was a big proponent of the $50,000 reinvestment. I thought of it as dividends that we were reinvesting into the town, and I've seen this year in particular events going so well for Manchester, and as you and I have talked about a little bit, I think I think there should be an increase in the local option tax from 1% to either 2 or 2.5, possibly 3, and put even more money into marketing the town and beautifying the town. And I often use the example of Niagara on the Lake, where it's just amazing to me they have a 3% village tax and a 13% district tax, and they're swamped. And it's just a beautiful community, and what they do to the downtown is crazy. And I even went in and found out, you know, how do you afford this? And I think I'm also with the chairman on this core issue right now, bad timing, tough to say yes to a lot of things that we'd like to do. But I also think this is a very valuable investment. Again, I think that this is something that's going to pay back. I think it's leveraged. We always are looking for leveraged spending. I think it's leveraged. I don't know exactly what the increase means if we go from 6 to 0.3 to, sorry?
Math for you. It's
You
about
did.
a 1% increase on the tax rate from a .2803 to a .2893.
I don't want to put that necessarily on the backs of taxpayers, but at the same time, I see that again as coming back in spades for their benefit in terms of reducing their taxes with the, it's going to take a few years, but I know it's going to pay off. And this, the other issue being, why are we losing that possible revenue to other places that we love to complain about, the names I won't, towns I won't mention, in Manchester where people are going because they're already doing a myriad of events. And so, yeah, it's bad timing, but at the same time, I think it's incredibly important, and I'm in favor.
Can I offer a comment too? We were talking about the rec park and how that operates at a deficit every year. I think we have a $200,000 deficit this year, and talking about ways that we could also either start doing a lot of the things that were revenue generating. Is there any possibility that this person could collaborate with Town Hall and work on that piece? Like, that's something that we could even just redo it, starting our advertising again with the signs around, or charging.
Sponsorships.
Yeah,
And that was,
gates.
if you don't mind, that was
Yeah.
another thing, Heidi, that I was gonna mention is that, when I looked through the budget and I looked at back even 2023, there was $12,000 in revenue from Applejack Stadium rental. Or
Yeah.
I forget what it was, the
Yeah.
line item, that's no longer there. And
Because
that
we
was
just don't-
because
we can't
had
man it. We can't-
Tournament
yeah.
events and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
there wasn't the manpower, and I totally understand that, to make that happen. And that, yes, absolutely, that position will be focused on town assets, including all of Dana Thompson Park, to make sure that, and even the Street Fest and the various things to increase vendor fees and things that go directly to the town that I haven't even accounted for when I talk about a 2.5% growth in occupancy in this town over the.
See, I could make a case just, if we could just even reignite some of the sponsorship fees or the gate fees or the
Absolutely.
field fees, we could account for that 25,000 in this year's, but, I mean, we don't have the dedicated focus on it, and if there's somebody that's already looking at a calendar and trying to come up with creative ways to utilize our resources, this would be like a pretty easy way to recoup that amount, I think, fairly
Well,
easily.
arguing against myself and agreeing with you,
Good.
because that's what I do. With the 4th of July alone, we used to have sponsors for the fireworks. And over time, that kind of fizzled, and I believe that's an $8,000 to $10,000 expense, more than that. So potentially half of what the cost of this is if we could solicit sponsors through
Can you help with that?
this person. We've just defrayed half of we may have just defrayed half of the
We
cost.
want to take that day, not just we, the NBA, but, when we think about this position, to plan out more of an early evening event with food trucks there and making it a full day activity and getting sponsorships to help support the fireworks, if not pay for the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's enough. I agree with how there's enough. Even if you came in half on the signs and had revenue from increased street fests or an additional street fest or whatever those values were, could easily offset this.
So what if we,
What if it's one time, not in perpetuity, but what if
Well,
we agree to a
we
one
can
time?
come to this
well,
every year.
well, I'm thinking about how to get this into this budget year, under the budget that we're hopefully going to approve tonight. What if we reduced the expenditure line on street fests and 4th of July by an amount approximating half of what we're contributing to this, with the expectation that this new position is going to bring in sponsorships to replace that revenue?
I think that's a great way of
That
doing
brings
it.
it down to a 0.5% increase in the tax rate rather than a
Yeah,
1%.
and- Yes. and doesn't put any potential expectations on sign revenue. That's not even talking, we're not even talking about sign
Well,
revenue.
there's expectations.
So there are, but like if,
I mean, this is something that we can point to,
yes,
that we've had sponsors in the past, and because it's just so hard to manage
Yes.
within the staffing that we have now. We used to have an events manager,
Yeah,
but,
I was aware of that.
uh-oh.
Also, we came up with this idea as an organization because we knew that that position has left the
Yeah.
town directly and feel we can help. I mean, because of the contribution the town makes of that 50,000 and potentially this next 25,000, we really have been trying to hone in on trying to make sure that we're doing the best, not only by our business members, but as a town as a whole. And these are things that could help achieve more at the Parks and Recs for sure.
We're, right, with the document we have before us,
they would change the warning, right?
we're at,
Warning you can't be signed tonight anyways.
Okay, because that's good enough, okay,
I misspelled it.
I know.
If you go to the rec park line items, I think I could find it.
And for the,
Can I make a comment? About this?
if you want to move to the podium, yes, you may.
Thank you. Great, hi guys. So my name's Kate Swideman Tyler. I know some of you guys have been before. I've been a resident of this area for over 12 years. I serve on the board of directors for the Manchester Business Association and the Manchester Elementary Middle School PTO. And I'm a freelance marketing consultant. I have a background in destination tourism, real estate, and food and beverage, among many other things. So thanks for the opportunity to speak. I was prepared to echo a lot of what John said, but I don't really feel like I need to do that. I'm going to take my business hat off for a minute, and I'm going to speak to you as a mom. So this is an area where the events manager can make a real difference and an impact in our community. Events that are designed for teens and young adults are essential. They provide a sense of belonging, opportunities for growth, and a safe outlet for social and creative expression. Events for young people help them feel included and valued within their community. They promote leadership, teamwork, and confidence by offering opportunities to plan, participate, or showcase their talents. They also provide safe, supervised spaces for socializing, reducing the likelihood of risky behaviors. The impact of these experiences lasts a lifetime. Fun and engaging activities build community pride and create memories. Events that are focused on music, art, sports, or tech allow teens to explore passions, develop skills, and discover new hobbies. Social interaction and recreational activities are also crucial for mental health, helping teens manage stress and feel connected. These events bridge gaps between age groups by involving families, mentors, and local organizations, fostering mutual understanding and collaboration. I'm going to go back a little bit. So I'm going to put my business hat back on. So one of the things that I'm really interested in this opportunity is this idea of community connection. And this is the thing that I care about the most for this events position. I am looking for more opportunities for our residents to celebrate shared traditions and make new connections and strengthen bonds. A town with a strong sense of community is a town that people want to be a part of. Spend a few minutes on any of our local forums and you'll see where I'm coming from. People want to feel connected. Sometimes they don't say it in the nicest terms, but an events manager can help make that happen. They can collaborate with local organizations, nonprofits, and even neighboring towns to create larger, more impactful events. By pooling our resources, we can create opportunities that benefit everyone. An events manager will also curate activities that highlight Manchester's unique character, history, and offerings. This doesn't just attract visitors, it reinforces a sense of belonging and pride for those of us who already call this town home. Our community is hungry for events. For the last year, I've led the development
guess my
I
VPN's
also
not
wanted
working.
to speak to the fact of professional expertise. I'm not sure if any of you have ever planned or run events before. I've dipped my toe in it before, but managing events isn't just about having great ideas, it requires expertise. And an events manager brings the skills to ensure everything runs smoothly, reducing stress for volunteers, stakeholders, and our town resources. A skilled events manager handles marketing, planning, and coordination, which allows the town to focus on enjoying the benefits without the operational headaches. And by creating meaningful experiences and boosting economic vitality, an events manager could play a vital role in shaping Manchester's future. This is more than just events. It's about building a stronger, more connected, and more vibrant community. Let's give Manchester the tools it needs to grow, thrive, and shine. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm thinking about the events that we've had in the past and how those events were staffed. And many of those events were staffed by extra budgetary use of town employees, creatively. I don't know if we have an appetite for doing that going forward. So staffing of events becomes an issue. However, not an insurmountable issue. So thinking about what I was kind of honing in on, if the board decided to go with $25,000 to put into this item, I would like to see it offset by half that amount, $12,500, in offsetting revenue. Not elimination of events, but offsetting anticipated revenue on what might be 4th of July street fests and maybe some rec area activities, with the expectation that this position is going to foster that revenue coming in. And that would cause a 0.5% increase from 6.29 roughly to 6.8% increase on the amount to be raised by taxes.
John has a comment.
John?
I just had a follow-up. One of the things you may want to consider is under the Applejack Stadium gate receipts, you could add a little bit of revenue.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And also look at, because the fact that we're predicting option tax revenue is going to go up, I mean, right now, I believe the budget has 1.425 million appropriated for it. You could increase that to 1.435, which will help keep it at that where you all were right now.
We could,
Yeah.
but we're also trying to bring that account up to where it should be. We've been drawing from that account in the recent past, and we need to fortify that account as a taxpayer relief fund. And I think the amount that we put in is a reasonable one. Even if revenue increases, it should go into that fund to build that fund up.
But if we did 5,000 for, let's say 5,000 in or 5,000 less for July 4th, let's just use that, was 11.
Yeah, instead of reducing on the expenditure side, I want to increase the revenue side.
Okay, so then-
The expectation that this position will bring revenue toward, and I'm not sure what
Sponsorship,
line
yeah.
that would fall under, but revenue toward those special events and revenue toward the rec area, Applejack Field, whatever those numbers may be. And I think if we could bring that up to,
Well, could we just put
12.5.
12.5 in the rec area where it used to be under advertising and just know that that's like a placeholder for, it could be gate receipts, it could be concession, it could be field use, it could be,
I defer to Scott on where that,
We could put it in a line item under the rec as revenue source and try to
Okay.
figure it out. It's gonna be hard to track on our part. I would assume John would anxiously track it on his
Yes.
I love numbers.
part. So I will remind the board that the major generator of the revenue source that you both referred to was the Fusion Soccer, which is disbanded.
Yeah.
It's no
Right.
longer.
right. So that's
there's
not going to come
opportunity
back.
for other
Bill?
tournaments or other, we could add expedition.
And we have already started the sponsorship program.
Oh, yeah.
John Bryan's
Rebooted it.
doing some work on that.
Yeah, and hopefully that'll help offset.
Bill Drunzik?
Thank you.
Couple quick comments. We definitely appreciate your focus on keeping costs down. On the other side of the coin, though, we're in a very competitive environment for what drives a lot of the revenue in our town, and that is the tourist and hospitality industry. So I like the focus on generating revenue. That's what this position is about, is generating more revenue that will more than pay for its expense over time. And there's a lot of opportunity, as you're discussing among yourselves, to do that. A comment relative to that, though, is your budget starts July 1st. And if we want to take immediate, let's say, advantage of this position, I think once the budget is passed, that's very optimistic, but that's the way I feel, we negotiate with the MBA and maybe whoever is their private funds, the other fund sources, to initiate that position is probably as early as April 1st. So
Yeah,
that-
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, so that we
Once we
can
commit.
take advantage of these revenue opportunities that are being discussed for the summer. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, I think from a pragmatic perspective, it might be a little irresponsible of us to anticipate revenue beyond half of the expenditure. It may wildly outperform our expectations, and if that revenue comes in, that's great. That'll help us build up our surplus account, but maybe. But I would caution against expecting that it's going to be this huge influx of revenue right away in year one, and therefore go with half the 12.5.
I agree with that, definitely.
I mean, I personally feel it's gonna outperform, but
I
I'm very hopeful.
I personally hope so.
Yeah,
You don't count your chickens.
no,
Yeah.
well, I've got 5
And-
at home, I had 7.
Well,
Well, count them when you get home.
I think based on their performance in the past 4 or 5 years, it probably is going to outperform expectation.
Yeah, I mean, just the lighted tractor parade alone, I mean, I've never seen an outpouring of folks in our community like that ever.
Well, I'll just, I'll let you know, as John was talking, I'm looking up and down the table, and I'm seeing a lot of support for what he's saying. And that's part of the reason why, instead of being obstructionist to this, I decided to jump on and see if I could help mold it a little bit. And people might think that I'm kind of wishy-washy, but I'm not. I can read the room. Okay,
What do we need to do on that?
we're under the,
Yeah, do we have to take an action on that, or is
Yeah.
that?
we would have to, and then we would have to approve it. Well, we would approve it in the context of the budget, but we'd have to be very specific about what the changes were. So, Scott, if we were to do this, a 25,000, is that a new line item?
It would just be MBA increase from 50 to
Could
75?
it-
No, the NBA 50,000 is pretty specific. That's
Oh, okay.
that's the marketing.
Marketing,
Okay.
I don't think you have to reference an account number, line item account number.
Right.
You just have it placed in the budget
Okay,
and
we'll figure out the
reference it
best way to
as-
do
yeah,
that.
best way to insert it, I'll get that.
okay.
I would imagine the easiest way is to add it to that line item and with a notation that 25 of it is, or 12.5 of it.
Well, we can figure that out after the fact.
Right.
What we need to do is, if we're
No,
gonna,
you would put the full 25 there. and
You
then
put
have
the
an
full 20.
Offsetting 12.5 elsewhere. in
Elsewhere.
revenue.
Elsewhere,
Yeah.
okay, so
Revenue.
revenue's gonna be under the rec area.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the work that's already been done and how hard it is to make this change. And
I'll comment on that in a minute, but in the meantime, I've got like a line item for revenue under Parks and Rec, miscellaneous, and we could insert that with a
Perfect.
comment on the side saying that's.
Yep.
what we're anticipating.
I'm good with that.
Okay. So there will be those two changes. Are there any other changes beyond what we discussed at our last meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question that's asked of me from the town clerk's office, which was, why was, and I did talk to the town manager a little bit, but I don't know that I understand the answer, where the preservation fund is in our, should it be listed in the budget and in the town report? So apparently it's within a fund, right, Scott? And I think she's suggesting that like a fire truck fund, for example, or equipment fund, that this be listed the same way. And I know I've seen it in the budget.
Well, the transfer in for record preservation is line number 403.
Okay,
Which is there, and it's the way it's always been recorded. But I think what you're referring to is a balance, running a balance total for a capital account, which we've never incorporated in town reports, although I've seen it in other towns, and I think
Yeah.
it's a good idea.
yeah, I'm only bringing it up just to have that discussion about whether it should be or not.
And we
But-
can, if you'd like, to put a list of the capital accounts in the associated balances of, 12, or the end of the fiscal year. We could include that in there, that's not a problem.
I think that's good.
I think it makes sense
Yeah.
to include it.
Yeah, because without it, you don't know how much money you have to spend, and the voters are voting on just the budget increase, and that's all they can
Right.
look at.
There's no context.
Yeah.
Good suggestion.
That cleared it up a little. Thank you. I think we should definitely do that.
Okay, and I'm not hearing any other changes being proposed for the budget itself. I think we're in a position where we can approve it this evening.
Great.
Do we have to make a motion first about the 25,000, or do
Well,
we?
no, it'll be, when
it
you
will
make
be
the
in
motion,
the-
we,
You can approve the budget as amended.
As amended, okay.
yeah, and we've already noted those changes.
And you can include that in the language if you want,
Yeah.
as amended.
You can, in the language, we could approve the budget as discussed, with the additional expense of $25,000 for an events manager, and a revenue item of 12.5 in the rec department. And
I see
think
somebody's
we've got the motion
making
going
notes.
right here.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the budget with the additional expenditure of $25,000 for the MBA events manager, and an offsetting revenue item of $12,500 under the rec park under miscellaneous. And anything else we discussed this evening?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Anybody raising their hand?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
5-0. We have a budget. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I had no idea where that was gonna go when I came in. All right, at this point, I would like to open a meeting of the Water Board and to join, and also a meeting of the Sewer Commissioners. And let me just explain, the Select Board is the Board of Sewer Commissioners, but it's a different hat, and the Water Board is a completely different board, except for me. So, welcome, and this is a joint meeting of the Board of Water Commissioners and the Sewer Commissioners to review a request, and I think Kevin Mullaney is here, I hope, on Zoom. It's a request for a possible reduction of sewer and water allocation fees for the new business at 4595 Main Street. Kevin, we do have your letter. Would you just like to lead us in a little bit with maybe a little bit of discussion about what you're doing there, because people often ask, and then your actual request? And it's good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too. So, so we're in the process of building the new brewery in front of the Hampton Inn Hotel. Construction is underway, and so when we permitted this project, we budgeted the water and sewer connection fees under the previous schedule, I guess. And so in talking to Mr. Murphy about it, I would like to ask the board for approval to base our fees on the old previous schedule, which I believe allowed for 50% reduction for outdoor seating, since, you know, realistically, the seats won't be used, you know, but half the year. I know that our civil engineer, Chris Vanessa, had been in discussions with the town about it, about the connection and our fees. And the town, you know, graciously allowed us to move forward, knowing that we were going to try to speak to the water and sewer boards about this. You know, because as the weather was getting colder, you know, Brent wanted to get all the pipes in and everything. So we greatly appreciate that. We would like to see if we could get agreement to bring the fees down for the outdoor seating to the 50% level. And I did provide a grid calculation for the water and also the sewer, you know, the gallon use estimates, and then the associated fees. The total between the two would be $114,000 and $114,742 would be the total fee for the water and sewer under the, you know, that revised schedule.
And that's 114 is, wait, I'm doing some math. So there was some calculations that sewer was approximately 140,000 and water was approximately rounding up to 60. Is that right? Yes. And then, so approximately from 200,000 down to 114. Is that about what I'm? It's
198 down to 114, so
yeah.
142, yes.
I always round up.
Those figures are approximate.
So it's approximately 50%.
So I think we need to break this down into two separate requests. I think at the point that you applied for your permit, the rates for outdoor seating were 50% of the going rates. And the justification for that still stands, that we're in Vermont and about half of the year you're not going to be sitting outside. But it's two different issues, and I'm not talking about the meeting room. I'm just talking about the outdoor seating. In order to accommodate, it would be an extremely slippery slope for us to abate or give some consideration based on the regs that we have right now. However, I think the regs should be changed. And I'm just speaking for myself. I haven't had a chance to talk to the other board members about this, but I think we should go back to the 50%. I think we could consider your application based on the
when it was permitted.
When the request came in and what the regs were then. So I think for this particular application, we could consider it that way, as it came in under a prior administration with a prior set of rules. But then I think we should move forward to maybe change the regulations to allow it for everybody, because I think it makes sense. On the meeting room, that one's more difficult. It's indoor seating. you have a management decision to use it in a certain way, but the seats are there, it could be overflow seating, it could, I mean, you could make a decision in-house to do anything with it. And so I'm having a little tougher time, and I don't see the mechanism by which we would reduce the rates based on a proposed percentage of use. That's not something that we've done in the past, and probably not something that we could figure out here this evening.
Okay.
And I'm gonna stop talking at this point because I know other people have something to say.
Is there, how many outstanding permitted projects since, do we have that were permitted during the old schedule versus under construction?
I can't think of one off the top of my head.
This is a unique.
This should be the last of those.
And this is the same, it's the same permit, like it's not a separate, it hasn't been a
They
new permit.
submitted a request for
2000.
ability to serve letter, which John had done, and basically starts the process. And they actually submitted permitting papers at that time also. So it was an unusual circumstance that it was just because of the other permits that they had to get and the financing to get this thing started.
Yeah.
And we don't have any expiration dates on these, so.
Thoughts? Doug?
I think most people in town would be supportive of projects such as yours. Many people say a group up is long overdue in a town like Manchester, so I think that's the consensus. But it is a zero-sum game, the water department and the sewer department, I believe, as well. So if we give you a break, so to speak, or some concession, it moves that burden onto the other users, and there's only so much of that that's equitable. But with that said, I too support the 50% for the outdoor seating as opposed to 100% for the outdoor seating.
Yeah.
Seems reasonable to me based on Vermont weather, I guess, to some extent.
Thank you, Doug. Any other thoughts at the table? No?
I mean, I'm along the same lines with you. I think it is incumbent of us to maintain when the permit was issued. I mean, permitting is a long, arduous process.
Yeah.
So I think at minimum,
Well, I think the fact that the ability to serve was already granted
yeah, right.
in that timeframe
And I think
has some bearing.
the question just comes down to the meeting room. I think that is a bit ambiguous.
Well, it's not something that we've ever done. To my knowledge, we've never granted a permit based on an anticipated percentage of time that you use it. And it's seats and here's the price, and beyond that, it becomes a management decision. Do we use the seats? Do we not use the seats? I mean, the room is there, the
Right.
seats are there, and the ability to fill them. So it becomes difficult to monitor.
It'd be virtually impossible to monitor or enforce.
And Doug's very familiar with a similar situation that used to exist in his former place of business.
So that would,
And that's fair.
that would increase what,
Yeah, that would increase that one.
3,000 on the water and 7,500 on the meeting room, so roughly 11,000 additional, right? Ish.
I'm not looking at his numbers, I'm looking at our.
Yeah, I think we need to look at our numbers.
Okay.
It would just be recalculate down sort of outdoor seating at 50%, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's all I would propose.
50% on the outdoor seating.
The number you want to focus on is gallons per day. That's,
Okay.
that's what we use to measure how much we're going to charge against the set fee. So in water, you get $5 times gallons per day. In sewer, we have $12 times gallon per day. So in my quick calculations, by agreeing to that seasonal, outdoor seasonal seating reduction, we will save about $8,775 in the water section and save $21,060 in sewer.
And what's the total gallonage underwater and sewer at this point? Do you have those numbers? Because that's really what we're allocating.
Right.
total gallons for the water I had at 69.44 and sewer at 66.69.
Yeah, but then we're adding the meeting room back in, so,
So our numbers right now, without changes, for the water is 11,609 gallons per day.
okay.
And then, so if we reduce that outdoor seating, we're going half the 130, so we've gotten down to 65. So that's 65 times 27, which is 1755. So instead of 3510, it becomes 1755. And that will reduce the 11,609 by 1755, 9854. So that'll be times 5 at 49,270. So it went down from 58,000 to 49,270. That's on the water side. Same thing for the sewer, we're at 65 seats times 27. 27 is the gallons per day. That's 1755 there again, and that will reduce the 11,609 by 1755, giving us 9854, and that times 12 gives you 118,248, which is a reduction from 139,308.
So,
I might be wrong, of course, like everybody else in this situation. $29,835 reduction is what I came up with, if you want to do it in dollars.
You're adding water and sewer together for a
Yes,
total
that's
fee.
what I was doing, but that's the method. It's 21,060 and 8775. Does anybody agree with that or disagree?
I have 167,518 is now due.
167.
Bill's got his hand up.
Bill,
Just a suggestion, trying to get everybody's math together, would it be simple just to approve the reduction of the outdoor seating down to 50% and then let
That's
the
it.
numbers get straightened out?
yeah, I mean, that's a,
I agree.
it probably is the right way to go. Do we typically, and I should know the answer to this, do we typically approve a gallonage? I mean, typically you would
You
approve
set
it.
the rates.
We set the rate and you would approve it.
And I do the calculations.
So
charge
what
the
you
fee.
need from us is the,
Is set that outdoor
is the
rate.
authority to cut the outdoor seating in half.
Well, I technically think the messaging should be that it should be approved at the rate that it was when this was permitted.
Correct.
So that would be,
Because the next person is gonna be right down the street.
Yeah.
Coming in looking for an
right,
outdoor
so I
seating
think
reduction.
that has to be a totally separate conversation. I think you need to permit it as where it was when the permits were
Permits
signed.
was
And then
applied.
separately, you could have a discussion about outdoor spaces being utilized at 50% rather than 100%. But those should be totally separate.
Yeah, but this application, when this application was filed,
It was
outdoor
50
seating was at
Right, well, so
50%.
that's why I'm saying, instead of coming up with a dollar amount, say that it should be permitted at the rate that it was,
50% rate.
right, at the 50% rate, which it was when.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would make it
Are
clear.
are we ready to make a motion?
Go, Heidi just said it, go Heidi.
I'd like to make a motion to approve, the sewer and water.
No, we can
No.
only do the sewer.
Sewer.
The sewer, the sewer fees, connection fees?
Allocation.
Allocation fees, to be set at the rate that they were when the original permitting was issued for the project,
For outdoor seating.
for outdoor seating only.
Okay,
Does it-
seconded by Jan. Further discussion? Questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now we're gonna do the water.
Yeah, right.
Oh, right.
If the secretary could reprint that motion.
Can you go to the podium, please?
If the recording secretary could reprint that motion, that would be great. I would make that motion to reduce the rate to 50%
Is there a second? Second. There is a second, okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion is carried. So it's been approved on both the water and the sewer side. I'd like to just take the conversation to the next step. Do you think we should amend our ordinance now to reflect that outdoor seating should be 50% of indoor seating? 'Cause I think there's all the rationale in the world for that to be.
Can I put a little timeout on that
Yeah.
one? It's not, we're not warned, the agenda's not warned for.
I'm just trying to get a
I know
sense.
it, okay, so
Um,
saying maybe down the road.
Yeah,
Maybe next
yeah, I'm
meeting.
trying to get, if we have consensus on that.
So if I can still
and-
jump a little
And if
bit
we have
further.
consensus here at this table, do you think that, okay, so what
So
I'm
my only
saying,
comment would be, when we switched from our own designed rate table, we switched wholeheartedly to the state table.
yeah,
State does not have outdoor seating, they don't have a breakdown for outdoor seating, it's all one. So if you're gonna change that and just, I mean, it's conceivably you could do that. We just gotta know that, you know, everything the state provides, we're agreeing to except for this one
yeah,
particular item.
and you're the wordsmith and you'll figure out how to do that.
Well, let's warn it and think about it and figure out.
Or,
what the
or
consequences
Doug, I don't,
That's right, because I'd like to get Chrissy Haskins
Yeah,
to comment.
yeah, what if there's things that we haven't, like, it's,
Yeah.
this one's fair because he had it permitted back
yeah.
then. We don't,
But
like,
what I'm doing is setting the stage to have this discussion. And,
Absolutely.
and people may say, hey, this is a terrible idea. Doesn't affect Kevin. You know, we've taken care of his situation as best we can. And then,
Thank you, by the way.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
thank you, Kevin.
Just a suggestion to meet the state issue, just cut the seats in half.
Oh, boy.
They might be a little uncomfortable. Okay, I think we're done with that, but we'll, you and I can talk about this, Scott, and we'll figure out if we want to get it on the agenda in the future. Right now, we're focused on town meeting. Microbrewery.
Vending?
Neil, I see you're here. Agenda item number 8 is to review and possibly amend vending license regulations.
So, before we get into that, I'd just like to bring up to you why we're talking about this thing, because every year annually,
Oh, we should probably, a motion,
Oh,
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn the water meeting, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good night.
so every year, January 1st,
Should we close the sewer board meeting?
yeah.
yes,
I'll make a
Okay.
motion to close the sewer board meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, I'm sorry.
okay, so back to the vending license. So every January 1st, the annual ones, we start receiving applications. In fact, we already have one received so far. It's in the pending folder for the moment. And during the year, issues had come up with certain vendors. And I'm not naming any one because there were several violations. And so I highlighted in that thing that you had in the packet, vending license ordinance, the regulations, I mean. For instance, Class 1 vendors can only have one single pole umbrella. They can't use tents, canopies, awnings, or other multiple apparatus. And they cannot use chairs or tables that are used by the public. And then they have a footprint of 100 feet. And then the Class 2 is very similar. They can have 2 of those umbrella type things, but they may not use tents, canopies, awnings, or multiple pole apparatus. Vendors may not use chairs or tables that are used by the public. And they can't exceed a 200 square foot footprint. So, I mean, if you paid any attention at all, you did see that there were several violations that are out there this year. So our enforcement group wanted to know how badly we want to enforce the current regulations. Do we want to amend the regulations? Do we, you know, do we want to change them, or do we want to leave them as is and we just enforce them the way they're written?
And what would be the rationale for changing the ordinance?
Well, we would
Less
change it to a lot,
violations.
yeah. Right, I mean, it's kind of grown, so it's overgrown regulations in several areas. Footprinting is not enforced. The number of umbrellas or awnings you can have is not enforced. You know, and and the picnic tables, and they're at every one that I can think of, maybe not one or two, but mostly.
Yeah, I would
And
say-
that's a little shaky area, because if the owner of the property wants to put a picnic table on his or her property, they can do so, and then
Well, they can, and we've got into that
they
discussion
need to
with,
put a sign on it saying.
with
for
a vendor that
property owners only.
no longer exists, but the underlying landowner had picnic tables there, and there was nothing to prohibit someone who was patronizing that particular vendor to go over and use those picnic, and that's fine. The rationale behind trying to limit the footprint, trying to limit the tables and the seating and the umbrellas and all that is because vendors are in direct competition with bricks and mortar restaurants in town without having to jump through any of the regulatory hurdles that those restaurants have to go through, including getting a zoning permit, having to have parking spaces, having to have green space and trees and everything that goes along with a site plan. They simply occupy a space, and at what point in that occupied space, if they start adding tables and chairs and roofs, umbrellas,
Restrooms.
and all those things, at what point does that become an actual restaurant? And so, and what makes that any different than a restaurant with outdoor seating? So there needs to be a line of delineation between what is a vendor and what is a restaurant, and we tried to hit that line of delineation with the ordinance as written. In many cases, if not most cases, I'm looking at the list right now, the vendor occupies a parking space that may or may not, in the underlying permit, be dedicated to the underlying use. And at one point I suggested we should probably look at that. If that underlying property does not have excess parking, they shouldn't be giving a parking space away to another use when they need it in order to have their permit. There are those kind of issues. We have made parking a very important part of the permit that you get, and that parking is dedicated to a use. And we have not asked vendors to have parking as it relates to their use because it's itinerant. You know, it's people that are there for some other reason. They haven't come specific, and they may, because Neil has some good food. They may come just to get food from Neil, but under most circumstances, they're already there. They're already occupying a space, and they're just saying, "Hey, I'll grab a hot dog while I'm here." That's the whole idea of the vendor as opposed to the restaurant. If somebody's going to go to a restaurant, they go there with a purpose. They're going to park their car. They're going to go in there. The car's going to occupy that space the whole time they're in there. So it's a different animal. The way we wrote the regulations tries to delineate the difference between the two. So it's just me. I'm not the rest of the board, but I think we need to maintain that line of distinction between what's a vendor and what's a restaurant.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement, Mr. Chairman. And I think we took into account making life a little bit easier for vendors not to have to move, or Class 2 vendors. And we made those changes, but I think you make very good points. And I think enforcement's really difficult because some are operating within the ordinance, and the ones that aren't are way outside. And I think we have to enforce the ordinance.
I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
You want to come to the podium?
Neil.
It's always good to hear what Neil has to say.
Hello. Yeah.
So I can highly assume that when it pertains to me, it's probably about the picnic tables, because tenant awnings don't really apply to me.
Yeah.
John O'Keefe had approved 2 picnic tables, and he had actually collected money. I think it was like one table was good for 6 people, and he collected $50 per person on that table. And the second one, I don't think there was ever a collection, but that's my only argument on the picnic table. So it was approved, John, I think on the first one was, like I said, it was paid for, and then the second one was a verbal okay. I don't know if that does me any good today, but
Hey,
that's the reasoning for it.
No, I appreciate your input on this. And under any class license, the way the regulations are written right now, that the vendors may not, I don't like the way that it's worded, but it says vendors may not use chairs or tables that are to be used by the public. I think what it's trying to say is vendors may not provide chairs or tables to be used by the public. And I'm not giving you an out here, but what I'm saying is if as what happened with another vendor, the underlying property owner had the space and was within his permit for his underlying space to have some picnic tables for his own employees, and the vendor took advantage of those, and that's fine. That's something that existed. It was an agreement, could have been an agreement between the vendor and the underlying landowner. It could have just been something that got utilized, but it wasn't the vendor's picnic tables in that particular instance. And I don't have a problem with that, because it didn't put that particular business into default position on their underlying permit. We have to be very careful that the vending situation doesn't, and then the zoning administrator has to look at the underlying permit for the underlying use and say, hey, look, there's no accommodation for this. It all needs to go. So it's a lot more complicated, unfortunately, than it would seem on the surface. And like I said, I don't have a problem with the picnic tables being in proximity as long as they are tied to, tied to the landowner and not to the vendor. And I'm not giving you a way to skirt the thing. I just think that's reasonable. And
So I could sell my picnic tables to the property owner?
yeah. But that keeps it fair for all. I mean, and if you look at a place, there's a vendor that's right in the middle of town, occupies a couple of spaces, one for their vehicle and one for their cart, and they don't have any room for any seating, and it's a very congested parking lot, and the underlying property owner does not have any space for any seating, and there'll never be any seating there. Where some of, especially the class twos are, there might be space for the underlying property owner to say, hey, yeah, I've got these tables, you can use them. That's between you and them.
So I guess it comes down to enforcement then, so then how,
Yeah, we can do that. It's just, we've been lax because of the history of the way this developed. And that's why it's here tonight, before the new licenses get renewed.
I think if we relax the requirements and allow all these things for vendors to do at our very next meeting, we're gonna have a lot of restaurant owners in here saying, hey, what the heck?
Right.
We had, when we first started, I remember when you first came to town, there was a lot of hoopla. I remember I stopped and said, hey, try one of Neil's hot dogs. And the next thing I knew, there were pictures of me circulating around town, patronizing Neil's business. And I wasn't ashamed that I was there, but I was going, wow, some people are hiding behind the bushes here. And it was a local restaurant owner that was literally hiding down over the back, taking pictures of everybody that was buying hot dogs. That's changed. I think the vendors have become an important part of the streetscape and the
I'm pretty sure we say this every single year though.
We do.
And I think we always say we should really revisit like the outdoor seating, like the seats on the sidewalk, because we always do a temporary fix. And then we always say, gosh, we have to really address this, and we never do it.
Yeah,
So,
but I'm saying on this one, let's not change anything.
And Neil, when I made my comment, I wasn't thinking of you at all. And I was around when the discussion of those picnic tables, I think, took place. I don't remember charging per person at the time. I think there was discussion about a freezer or another trailer or something within or next to the main trailer.
Right.
and then that got involved, the parking issue about whether or not that was over allocation, or they were using the space in the right manner, and then it was sorted out. So picnic tables weren't even in my,
Somebody mentioned picnic tables, and I figured that was me.
picnic tables weren't
Plant
part of,
signs and really,
No, I mean,
would not be me.
and I think that, yeah, you should sell them to the owner.
yeah, the square footage, footprint is, an issue for certain vendors too, so.
Yeah.
All these things we'll address, and you'll be starting to see some of the applications coming in at the next meeting.
Well, I don't mean to railroad here.
No, well, is there a precedent elsewhere too, or maybe, Scott, where you've been about vendors and having a mutually happy understanding, or is it always a little bit
It's always though.
tense?
Yeah.
Was there I mean, to Neil's point, when there was a verbal agreement, sounds like with John O'Keefe, was that actually part of, that was he authorized it, or was it something that it was?
That wasn't part of the discussion.
That
It
wasn't,
wasn't part of
yeah.
our regulations, right?
No, I don't
There
know.
was nothing here, there's nothing that happened in here.
Right. It happened on site.
I think I spoke to him at a soccer game.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so he's in a real good mood at a soccer game. So that's a good place to approach him.
So hopefully that,
I think Bill has him.
I mean, for the record, our current town manager referees soccer games too, so,
We go along?
And he referees vending too.
Bill's got his hand.
Bill has his hand up.
Bill,
What,
You might want to come to the podium, because that way everybody at home can hear you.
what determines vendor fees today?
This size, class 1, class 2.
Is it a
Right.
flat rate, or?
Flat rates for different classes.
Right.
So we have class 1, class 2, we have class 3, which is a farmer's market. And we had three class 1s at the end of the year and 3 class 2s, and then the one farmer's market.
And we're allowed 6 of each?
6 of each. The farmer's market, class 3, doesn't have a limitation on it.
And, from a business perspective that's involved in bricks and mortar restaurants, the concern is, I love vendors situations, but the concern is keeping a relatively fair playing field with, and you outlined what the bricks and mortars have to put up. And the minute you start putting tables and chairs, then you have to consider the whole bathroom and restroom issue. The other side of the coin, though, relative to just walking up to a vendor and then not having a place to sit down and buy, and you have to walk down the street or walk through the parking lot, I think it is probably desirable in the whole picture of things to create a way that they can provide some very minimal but short, seating where people can sit down for 10 or 15 minutes. You read kind of instead of having to walk down the sidewalk on Main Street or walk around the parking lot eating whatever you purchase. If you're going to, I think that's a reasonable fix to the problem, okay? But the parking situation is that I think the landowners have to demonstrate that they can devote one, or if you're going to create 2 parking places or 3 parking places to the vendor location. I think that's probably an issue we don't
That's a good enforcement
really look
issue.
at very carefully.
yeah, and I've always said that, and I thought, as each location gets proposed, we should take a quick look at the permit. Is all that parking allocated already, and therefore we can't really free up a space? I mean,
It's not only the vendor taking up the space, but it's the people that come
yeah,
to the vendor.
and
A great amount of them are bicyclists, are walkers.
right,
If they're in the right condition, but there are people who drive to these vendors too, and I don't know how we can measure that, but I wouldn't go that far. But at least if you're taking up 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 spaces, whatever you negotiate or it's required for you, that permit ought to be able to accommodate that. Now, with a a lot of the parking has been created years ago when we had tighter regulations, so a lot of places have that flexibility to do that, but not every place.
Yeah.
But I would like to, if we're going to have them, I think they do need some reasonable accommodation to allow people to park themselves and eat. A lot of it's take and go, get in a vehicle and we go on, but
I think most of the places where these exist, the owners of the property can supply the picnic tables.
Yeah, I think if we start codifying things like that, that's where it
So-
gets slippery, so you just.
Yeah, and I think that's a,
are you gonna put the picnic table in a parking spot, or do you have the green space nearby, or where you can put it?
Where it was, in the one that I specifically referenced where the underlying landowner, he had it on a green space that was
right.
not too far away.
Then I think that's fair.
Yeah. I mean, start there, but I agree with you. But I think it can be dealt with the ownership issue.
Well, and I think that, remembering
Thank you, Ben.
back
Thanks.
just slightly, I think the question about the one vendor who's on town property that's being leased out, technically, we are the landowners, the town is the landowners of that property, and we did not put those picnic tables out.
Mhm.
So I think that's an interesting, that may change,
Yeah,
but,
that may have to be
Yeah.
addressed.
yeah,
Sell the properties.
I know. That's why I said might change.
I mean, I think that the enforcement has been pretty good, though. I feel like they've been kind of gentle reminders and not a hard-handed approach, so I don't think it's, like, I think that the tension that may exist is really between them wanting more but knowing they shouldn't be doing
I
it.
think, I think the vendors are more an accepted part of the streetscape now. I mean, when Neil first came, that was the first time we'd really looked at a class 2, a larger vending operation, a vehicle with more than one person, and before that it was a couple of hot dog carts. We've seen a few of those now. People, I mean, back then you were under a lot of scrutiny. I mean, there was a lot of people milling around that weren't real happy with you, and that's all past now. It all seems like it's matured, and now we know what vendors are, and they add a lot to the community and the streetscape. So, and the whole downtown experience, much like the outdoor seating does for some of the restaurants. So, we're still learning, but and I'll say it for the last time. It needs to be very separate and different from a restaurant. We good? You happy?
So is there anything for me to do?
No.
So we're clear?
No?
Okay. Is there any chance we can approve the vendor license while I'm here?
No,
We have to,
So we have to,
we're in the next meeting,
it'll be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, what's the date for that?
21st. 2 weeks from tonight.
We try not to take actions on things that weren't on the agenda, because if somebody looked at the agenda and said, oh gee, I wanted to speak to that, and we've already taken an action on it, we took them out of the process.
Yeah, when I dropped off my application, I was under the impression that it might be on tonight's agenda.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was in there or not.
Not there. What's on the agenda,
Amend vending license
what's on the agenda is to review and possibly amend the vending license regulations. There's nothing on there about approving a specific application, so. But it's always good to see you.
Thank you.
You can zoom in next time if you want.
Yeah, zoom in.
yeah.
I'd rather see you guys.
Yeah, good for you. Old school. Cell tower.
So, we received a copy of Verizon's response to the Public Utility Commission's request for more information. They responded to 3 different parties, one of them being the town's opposition, the other was the Department of Public Service, and then various members of the public. So we have until the 17th to respond. So I spoke to Merrill Bent,
Bill?
the town's attorney, about this, and her comments are, yes, we do need to respond by the 17th. We should submit the report that we received from the telecommunication location finder, the Tectonic group that we hired. We should include that in our response and then write a letter affirming our opposition to the present location in the application, which is Riley Rink, and ask them to seek an alternative location. So, Merrill's on standby to write that letter. You have a copy of the finalized summary report, and if you note on page 11, which is in the conclusion section, one of the high bullet points says the applicant should attempt and exhaust all opportunities to procure a location within a property where telecommunication facilities are permitted. It's highly recommended the neighboring OI property directly to the north, that's the Daily property, be pursued diligently. So, you know, the whole report is saying basically that there are other locations, and the one adjacent to is probably the best one for coverage and meeting the town's requirements of setbacks and zoning. So tonight, if you're willing, I'll authorize Merrill to proceed to write that letter, and we will incorporate the summary report with it, and send it back before the 17th.
Sounds good. Does that require an action?
No.
Yeah, I agree, too.
I agree too.
Especially if it's
So
just next door.
Bill?
what's the implication? I mean, what are we really saying? Or is it?
Well, we didn't have to respond because we've already submitted our opposition. But now we have some technical expertise that we paid out of our own pocket.
Right.
That's showing where the best locations should be. So give that to them and let them make a decision. Because they're going to make a decision then.
And what are they saying, best location?
Daily.
Daly's property over there next to
Yeah.
Riley Ring,
Further away from the proposed.
but not far away. And still provide the coverage that they were expecting, hoping for.
Can this report be put up on the website? Can we share this?
Yeah.
Okay, because I think everybody would probably like to
Yeah.
see the results. And I'd go into it, but there's a lot for you to look at.
Yeah, I think that's the right thing to do. I mean, it's consistent with what we've been saying, and now we have, I mean, the reason why we hired these guys is to have,
Have something like
Yeah.
this, right, instead of just our opinion.
I think,
And, you know, in there, he did do some research for us for town-owned property,
yeah,
as being a host for one, that we could generate income from. So, rather than stepping in and saying ours is the best location,
right.
which should not be a good recommendation.
There's that miscellaneous line in the revenue.
yeah. So there you go. There's a budget jump that covers the.
Okay, so you're all set on that, Scott?
Yes, sir.
Ooh.
Town manager.
The next one, we might possibly designate the town manager as the ethics liaison to the State Ethics Commission and assign him as designated complaint recipient.
So, Act 171 was passed to the opposition of the Vermont League of Cities and Towns and almost all of the towns in the state. Because what it did, the first thing it did was eliminate everybody's ethics ordinance already, just like that. In the meantime, there was no ethics ordinance. So they put together this thing, and it requires lots of layers. And we're working on meeting all the requirements. And these are two of the requirements. Still to come is training requirements. That'll be for myself, of course, along with select boards, along with BCA, along with the DRB, BOA. Yeah, and so.
Was
these
this
have
the
to be-
training that Anita sent out, like erroneously, or maybe
I don't know what that
Okay.
was.
I should send some ethics training.
Yeah, it probably is, but here's the other kicker, they haven't produced any training yet. That's still to come. So anyways, they passed the laws, but they don't have anything in place yet. So, and there's no enforcement mechanism for all of this. Some town says, we're not doing any of this stuff. There's really not much they can do either, but we're gonna meet all the requirements.
I like the first option.
And we'll just do it, and get it done this month. So I don't necessarily have to be these two roles. If it defaults to the chair of the select board, if you don't assign it to me, and I wouldn't.
Oh, man,
I
well, we
wouldn't
need to
feel
get this taken care of
broken-hearted.
here this evening.
Also in that regard, if the complaint is against me, then I can't obviously be the designated recipient, and therefore you would become.
Right. Yeah, understood. Just getting back to some towns saying, see you later. I mentioned a couple of meetings ago that, based on a question that came from the audience, and I've seen a lot of discussion about this lately in social media and that sort of thing, is why doesn't the town do this and why doesn't the town do that? How come we're letting the state drive us? The state drives us.
Yeah.
We don't have any autonomy or authority to do anything without the permission of the state through statute. This is what we can do. This is what we're prohibited to do. We don't have any autonomy. We're creatures of the state. And it's been that way ever since I got into local government some 50 years ago. Nothing's changed. The state still tells us what we can and can't do. They've taken it a step further, though. At one point, and I'm going to say, probably, it might have been close to 20 years ago. We never had to do this before. The state required us, before we took our office as a select board member, we had to sign a pledge of allegiance to the state that we would never take any action that would cause harm to the state, and I refused to sign it. And I made the state aware. I am responsible to my constituents. If the town is put in a position where it's going to be detrimental to my constituency to be a delegate of the state to them, I refuse to do it. And I was the only selectman during the next couple of years that was operating without having signed that document. And then they ultimately changed the document. I'm not going to say it was entirely because of me, but they softened it quite a bit. It allows us to do our job, but we're still creatures of the state. We still do have to say that we'll follow the Constitution of the state of Vermont and all that. But the part about that we would cause no harm to state government through our actions, I couldn't sign that. So it doesn't make any difference. We still can only do whatever the state tells us we can do. And I've had some people that have communicated with me recently that I have to communicate back and say this, we don't have that authority.
And
We just can't
ultimately,
do that.
collectively, we elect those officials
Yeah,
to represent us at the state level.
Yeah.
And we are the beneficiaries, for lack of better words, of how we have to implement those policies. So yes, I know the feeling.
But we do, I mean, I recently heard some chatter about the town should be a charter town. That way you won't have to agree to anything with the state and all that. That's not true. First of all, in order to become a charter town, you have to have approval of the legislature to do that, and they have to approve your charter. You're doing it under the auspices of the state. You're not going off and seceding from the state and becoming your own little kingdom. These are all great ideas, but they just can't happen. And we don't have a charter. As a matter of fact, we explored that option when we first started talking about implementing a sales tax. And if you look at the list of Manchester was the first in the state of Vermont to have a local sales tax, but it was through a mechanism that came from the state down. We talked about creating a charter and having it be a one-issue charter, and the legislature said, not even going to look at it. So I remember going with your father up to Montpelier to discuss that.
Are you looking for a motion?
I'm waiting.
So I'd like to make a motion to designate Scott as the ethics liaison to the State Ethics Commission and assign you as the designated complaint recipient per Act 171.
So she, yeah, designate the town manager.
Yeah, it's Town Manager Scott Murphy.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
It would be nice if the leaders of our nation also were subject to a code of ethics. Because they fired the,
Want to end this meeting?
well, I find it highly hypocritical, number one, and two,
Well, we don't have any control over that.
yeah, I know.
What we
Definitely
do
not
have
on the
control over
agenda.
is our budget, or our agenda.
Town Manager.
We did that.
updates.
Town manager updates.
So we've been meeting with the union negotiating team, and Heidi's been helping us with that as a dedicated team manager. Team member. And so that's going along really well, I think. I think we're getting close. We've got another 2 meetings scheduled. And the comments were that we might not need that second meeting, so we're hopeful. It's gonna be painful, I think, in the end, but it's necessary pain. So that's the update on that. Annual town report was moving along great, surprisingly so, with Bonnie's absence. But tonight's actions will change that, but it's in arrears for a while. And then the auditors are here. They started this week, and they've given us a letter, so we won't have more than that at the town, annual town meeting.
Excellent.
You've been busy.
Is there any other business?
Mr. Chairman, a lot of comments about the speeding still that I'm receiving. And also, we had discussed the possibility of putting up one of those crosswalk blinking lights at the Baptist Church location and Colburn Cafe. I know that that comes with a hefty price tag, so I'm not sure if we can accomplish that. And then possibly, somebody said moving the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, one at Richville Road, the monitor, or, you know, the detector maybe to other locations. And I'm just bringing it up for your benefit, and there was something else, and I can't remember right now. But
The flashing, the pedestrian push button, we were talking about it at that avocado pit crossing.
Right, School Street.
School Street.
Avocado Pit, and I think it wouldn't be a bad thing to have it at the one that crosses in front of Colburn Cafe, I think it is. Is that what they're calling it now? And,
That might be a tough.
but again, it's,
That's a short little one, because you've already got bulb outs.
right,
So it's a short distance.
yeah.
We haven't had too many complaints
People
there.
are pretty good about yielding to pedestrians, and I've
Yeah.
monitored that as I'm going through, and the proximity to the roundabouts makes it very difficult to try to manage that, other than,
The one at the avocado pit is kind of a blind spot.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a
Yeah.
blind spot
And-
because of the
and it's
parking.
highly used, you know.
Yeah, that would be a
That-
good
that
one.
one is
That'd be
used
a
a
great
lot.
one, yeah. And then the overall feedback that I've gotten about the new speed limit on Main Street is it's been good for calming traffic coming into town.
Oh, good.
And I've been watching, and people are generally going about 35, maybe 40 in the 35-mile-an-hour stretch, but it's,
I can attest to that. My son was pulled over today. Got a nice warning and a good lecture. So.
Pull from you.
Can I ask, is there a possibility that we could get a member or two from the planning commission to come and give us an update at our next meeting? Because I know I had the pleasure of attending one of their meetings recently, and they've got a lot of stuff going on that I think would benefit us to get up to speed on it sooner rather than later. So could we ask them to come in and give us an update on where we are with the,
Sure.
Work they're
Would you
doing.
like to wait until they have that,
the
They
thing
have
for,
a public hearing on it
Yeah.
next, I think,
they
right?
do next week,
The
next meeting?
next meeting is a public hearing for the payment in lieu of parking.
Oh, no, I don't care about that. I mean,
Well, we do.
I do care about that, but I care more about it, the stuff that they're doing with BCRC on the town plan and the requirements of having that done within a time frame. And it would just be, I think, if we had a 15-minute, 10-minute update from them on just kind of where they are, I think that.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of murmurs, rumblings that are,
I'll ask Wilbur to come to
I
our
think,
next meeting.
yeah, not terribly accurate, and I'd love to have some color. And I think that they got a lot of really good information last night that would be useful for all of
Because I
us
think
to.
the goal is now is the draft will be available to the PC by February.
I don't think we
3rd.
need those maps. I think that if we just had a broad stench
Oh, I know, yeah, yeah.
what we're doing.
But I mean, at least the first draft of what they plan
Yeah.
from BCRC, not of the maps, but of the general town
Yeah.
plan update should be available February 3rd.
Okay.
There was one other thing. Oh, somebody asked Scott whether or not you could, if there's an older cruiser, whether it could be parked in different locations in order to let people believe that somebody's sitting there, or put a dummy in behind the driver's.
They do that
We used to
in
have-
the Hamptons.
And just to calm things down, they say they rocket out of the Button Rotary heading towards Dorset on Bonnet Street. And maybe if every once in a while we put a cruiser in a spot temporarily on the right-hand side, maybe.
We used to have
They might-
have that, his initials were BT,
Oh,
and
really?
he had an old cruiser, and he would sit in different side roads with a number of computers going in his car, and would occasionally pull people over, even though he wasn't a police officer, and used to spend a lot of time over at our public safety facility,
It was,
Bill Town.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm not advocating for that. I'm advocating for one of our actual older cruisers that may not have been traded in, to just be placed around. And I actually think it's a good idea with what's going on lately. There's been a lot of, I don't know who they are, but there are people wandering around town, and everybody's beginning to get a little antsy about it, and they're probably fine, and who knows. But the police presence might be a nice thing, a little bit of an enhanced police presence. But if
Think
we do
maybe
have,
we should talk about whether, with the chief, as to whether he thinks that would be an effective measure.
Sure.
I'm not sure how effective it would be.
well, I think the town folk will know that it's not manned, but I think visitors might take a second to,
I think anytime you can see an officer on foot, particularly in the downtown area, it gives comfort and also maybe warnings that people might be thinking of nefarious things.
yeah, and there's been more activity lately, and I just think it'd be an enhanced presence.
Speaking of officers walking around town, I saw on the national news this morning, early, a spider monkey had escaped from a house and was at large, walking around, spotted a police officer, and the guy had his body cam on, went over and grabbed his hand and wanted to be taken home. And I just thought it was the cutest thing I ever saw.
Take me.
But, so spider monkeys recognize that a police officer is a good thing,
Good.
yeah. Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
That's all I have.
That's all I have to.
Okay,
Okay, move to adjourn.
second.
Well, wait a minute.
Oh,
We don't, do
hold
we
on, we have
have
other-
a need for an executive session?
Do not.
Okay.
When's the next meeting before we do that?
January 21st.
January 21st, okay.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.